Welcome to the monthly Truck Stop webinar. This is Tommy Ruke from beautiful scenic Fort Myers, Florida. As you members of the Motor Carriers Insurance Education Foundation and the TRS program know that these are presented every second Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. These webinars are not filed for CE credit, and you do not gain CE credit by attending it. These webinars are for information purposes. However, we have a series of programs that do qualify for CE credit. Those will be starting the first Tuesday of January, and the first 4 hours of CE, which will be presented an hour at a time starting the first Tuesday in January, will be addressing business auto coverages. If you're interested in the state CE credits, just contact Beth at trs@ibci.net, and we'll send you more information concerning those CE opportunities online. Last year we had over 100 people that participated in that process. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat window. We'll attempt to answer them as time allows, or respond to you via an email after the webinar. If you have problems hearing us, or not seeing the slides, or any other problems like that, please note in the chat window or call our 800 number. You might want to write it down in case you have problems, 741-4084, and we will attempt to address those problems as we go through the webinar. We're going to talk here about how to help the motor carriers track and improve their CSA scores. CSA. It's had an effect on the motor carrier and their relationship with their customers and their insurance. It's been a short time. This was only rolled out to the public in the present form December 17th, 2010, and which means that we're now just approaching the third anniversary of it out. Yet in that short period of time, it has become one, if not the top concern of motor carriers. The ATRA has done a study, or they do an annual study each year about the #1 concerns of motor carriers, and in 2012 the CSA scores were their #1 concern. In 2013 it was the second concern of motor carriers, having the top concern dealing with the driver shortage potential that's looming in the background for everything. So it's on our insured's minds. But how is it affecting the motor carrier? First off, it's affecting them with relationship with their brokers. There's a concern for their customers, either the brokers or the shippers, that the broker or the shipper could be liable when using a, again, unsafe motor carrier. There's a lot of discussion about this. There's a school of thought that the motor carrier or the broker or the shipper cannot do too much due diligence because that might imply additional liability on their part, and just accept the federal safety fitness determination of unrated, satisfactory, conditional unsatisfactory, or they need to have at least a protocol that talks about their safety of the motor carriers they allow, or the safety rating of motor carriers that they allow to haul cargo for them. There is a couple of court cases where a shipper and a broker has been held liable or has had liability imposed upon them for choosing an unsafe motor carrier. These are areas that if you deal with brokers or shippers, you need to have them talk to their attorneys, and particularly specialty attorneys involving in this arena, to help them walk through what they need to do as a due diligence to properly position themselves when they choose a motor carrier, that they then have done it in a prudent manner and would have defenses concerning their choice of motor carriers. The second area that it relates with is their current or new drivers. Drivers do not want to work for motor carriers, particularly small ones, who have problems because small motor carriers, not small drivers, particularly who has problems because they were stopped. They'll be stopped more often, which will affect their work time and their future employment because of their pre-employment screening program. As you know, every time a motor carrier is stopped, the citations arising out of the inspection is not only shown against the motor carrier, but also shown against the driver in the pre-employment screening program. And any future application the driver might make to a future potential motor carrier employer, that future employer can access that information. So therefore, those records could affect their future employment. So drivers are reluctant to do business with motor carriers that have unsafe ratings. Most of us in this audience are involved in insurance, and this is the big area we deal with. In the survey and talking to carriers who specialize in providing insurance to motor carriers, insurance carriers who provide insurance to motor carriers, we find all of them are factoring in the motor carrier CSA scores during underwriting for selection and pricing purposes. Everybody looks at it. Everybody uses a program like CAB or others, Central Analysis Bureau or others, to aggregate this information and look at it. However, I have yet to find anyone who has formalized how they factor these scores into their underwriting and risk selection. In doing so, though, the problem we have is that the smaller the risk is, the more the scores affect their insurance. Simply because in the smaller, every underwriter has a time frame and has as much time as they can to decide which risks they want to provide insurance coverage for and at what price. That time restrictions of how long they can afford to, within their own everyday workflow, spend time with that carrier. They are smaller. There's less time for them to look in depth at what makes up that score. So therefore, it's affecting the smaller risk more than the larger risk in looking at their scores in the processing, underwriting, and risk selection process. Let's look at the overview for CSA. At the Motor Carriers Insurance Education Annual Conference in last October, again, there was 140 people who attended that. We had 3 speakers who spent significant time discussing the flaws in the CSA methodology. Rob Mosley, Dan Murray, and Steve Bryan all shared with us their thoughts and their concerns about how this methodology was developed, the inconsistencies and flaws in it, and how it is affecting not only insurance but the court cases that they're seeing. Some of the points these speakers made is CSA is not accurate predictor of crashes, even though that's what it's supposed to do. CSA scores are highly dependent on where the motor carrier operates. Certain states focus on certain things, and if your insurers are operating in a certain corridor who is more notorious for stopping risk who are speeding, they'll go up. If they're in certain corridors, like in Texas, where they cite people for windshield violations and or non-speaking English, like in Arizona, these things will affect their scores. It was also discussed by the lawyers and other things that CSA information should not be allowed in the court cases. In fact, there's a lot of admissibility in court cases that the CSA information is not, should not be going through the court cases and should not be allowed in. For additional information, you can go to atr-online.org. There's no charge for this, and download the study on compliance, safety, accountability that analyzed the relationship of the scores for certain risk and certain predictability of crashes. If you go to that website, again, it is free. You can also look at some other things that they have. It was something what we suggest in the programs we do that you look at periodically to keep current with the studies that they're doing. The study I already quoted about critical issues in the trucking industry. It was where I got this information here, but they gave a reasonable analysis of the safety, of compliance, safety, accountability, and how the scores might or might not predict future crashes. So I recommend you understand that their studies and their findings as you look further into how to help the insured with their individual scores. CSA is flawed, and scores are not a true measurement of safety or predictor of crashes. I think based on all the information that we find that this is in fact true. CSA is dependent on the size of the motor carrier, meaning the smaller ones have a greater chance of being stopped than the larger ones. Risks who can go around weigh stations and port of entries because of the free pass are stopped far less often than the ones who have to go through there. Also, it depends on where the motor carrier operates. And again, also what the motor carrier hauls, meaning the flatbed operators have a greater chance to be stopped because their load security is more visible to the enforcement officers than a reefer or a dry van. Yet, even with all this information, it still affects the motor carrier's insurance. And this is a balancing act that we deal with insurance area. We did a blog that was sent out on October 4th, 2013, that if you would want to download it, you go to TR's website and look for this blog. And it talked about the methodology is not a true reflection of safety or crash predicting based on the information that was discussed. The questions being asked were, how can I exclude CSA scores from a trial? How CSA increases the cost of liability insurance? Do alerts affect my liability insurance policies and underwriting? All those things were asked in those blogs at that time and addressed. And even with all the flaws and all, it's still a problem for insurance carriers. And that has to deal with the vice president of the insurance company who responded to one of their agents of why is this information used. And this vice president gave some insight on the thinking of the insurance companies. Accident victims are seeking higher and higher awards due to the economy and the unwillingness of doctors to treat any element, whether related to or unrelated to an accident, knowing that they will likely be paid by the insurer. So therefore, there's an incentive to get treatment. Poor CSA scores, they don't have a lot of impact on catastrophic policy limits. In other words, where you have policy limits exposed day one and you know that you're going to spend that and you post those things up, because that doesn't exacerbate the cost of the claims. It's already there simply because of the negligence of the driver, irrespective of the score and the damage the negligent driver did during this case. However, the main impact is the smaller and moderate liability claims by giving plaintiff's attorney ammunition for higher awards. In fact, we've had a number of attorneys talk this as the plaintiff's attorney's annuity. They are having classes to discuss how to use this information in court as often as we're having classes saying why it's not effective, why it should not be used in court. So due to the legal expenses or a jury likely anti-insurance companies' sentiments, most small and moderate liability claims never make it to trial and are settled at mediation. And at mediation, these scores will be discussed as well as the inspection selection system rating, and they will be noted in the negligence in hiring or safety and will favor the insured in most cases. In other words, the mediator will bring up in the process to the various sides that, well, these scores imply some liability. If these getting from the judge or getting from the jury, you're going to pay more. And in all cases, we're finding, based on the information that we're getting from the insurance carriers, that it is increasing their cost of settling, particularly the smaller or moderate scores. So here's the balance. Information is flawed. It should not be presented in court, yet it's costing us money. And in fact, that's where we are in insurance. We have to have enough premium to pay for the claims that our insurers incur. And these scores have seemed to, in particular in the last couple months, or a couple of years, excuse me, have increased severity. And if you deal with your insurance carriers, all of them will tell you that their severity is up. That's why they react to the scores. So what is my point? CSA is flawed, but it's affecting the motor carriers. As provider of service to motor carriers, it is my thought that providing a policy and collecting premium today is not enough service. There is need to also help the motor carrier with their operation, particularly their CSA scores. The opportunities to be of help to the insured is here more than any time else. And providing services to motor carriers, what we would hope that we deal with the Motor Carriers Insurance Education Foundation and the Transportation Risk Specialties program, is to give assistance to people providing service in motor carriers so they can go beyond the policy they're delivering. Part of this is what segment of the motor carrier market do you, insurance company, the adjuster, whoever you might be, services. Larger motor carriers. The larger ones have large enough to have loss prevention personnel that know about CSA and attempt to control the scores as part of their overall operation. In fact, talking to these larger motor carriers, they'll find they have people dedicated to the CSA. In fact, they go into their data base every day and find out, are there violations and are those violations accurate, and take steps to challenge and or to take down any violations that are not accurate. This is a major effort on their part. They spend significant time. And those will do or have available the things that we're talking about here in most cases. Yes, you would need to, if you specialize in that market, there's a lot of, we hope you'll find out of this, that you can at least discuss with them on a level basis and they can find help. But most of the motor carriers and most of the insureds that the segment of the market that we have had access to, meaning companies and retail agents, are small motor carriers. Depending on the information base, in other words, who you get it from, I've heard in the last year and a half that 85% of DOT number holders have less than 6 power units. 90% have less than 15 power units. 93% have less than 30 power units. I can't quiver about any of these numbers, but the point here is that the great majority of the motor carriers that are out there who need your services and who need policies provided by you, their agent, or the insurance companies that you work for or represent, or need your services for risk management services, are small, and they don't have loss prevention people. These people have a concern of trying to earn a living on a daily basis. Most of these principals will drive. A lot of their internal personnel is handled by family members, and they just don't have time to keep up on this mechanical data on a daily basis or a weekly basis or even a monthly basis. Their concern is they want to go run their truck, deliver their loads, get paid for their services, and get back home when they can. So that we're talking about here that particularly need your help beyond issuing the policies, and hopefully by doing so they will value your services and will become better insureds, not only because of their safety ratings improving, but because of their relationship with you, their provider of services. Let's look at the information that's on the federal website. You access this by going through the SAFER, by looking at the middle column on the bottom of the page for SAFER, and look at the analysis and insurance, and then there look at the SMS, which is a safety measurement system. This is the information that you find on that introduction that says the Federal Motor Safety Administration is an automated system that quantifies the on-road safety performance of motor carriers so that FMCSA can identify unsafe carriers, neutralizing them for intervention and monitoring if a motor carrier's safety and compliance problem is improving. Second part of it is the key part here. The SMS is not a safety fit determination. If attorneys are trying to say it is, even though we have to react to it at mediation time, their own words say that this is not a predictor of crashes. It's safety there. It even goes on in this middle paragraph, so the use of SMS for purposes other than those identified above, meaning for the FMCSA have a position where they intervene with and try to help the motor carrier on an ongoing basis. They use it for that, would have unintentional results and inaccurate conclusions, meaning it shouldn't be used in court, yet it is. FMCSA highly recommends that all motor carriers periodically review the SMS. You've got to remember the data is downloaded the last week of each month, and every motor carrier gets a revised score the first of the following month. So it's recommended to review these things, and a part of the review is that they can correct any potential errors through the data queue system, and that is available online, and we plan to do a presentation or white paper later to assist you in helping your insurers take some violations down for the data queue. There was an announcement today, if you have looked at the transport topics on the one that's for the first of the week, December 9th issue. The headline is, there's a new system now where the FMCSA is now allowing for citations that have been successfully tried in court, and the citation is dismissed in court, that now you can take those violations off of the rating of both the PSP for the driver and of the motor carrier. Again, something that was announced just today in Transport Topics. That's the advantage of being familiar with and understanding how to correct any bad information. But again, this needs to be done on a periodic basis so that it can be done quickly before it festers and stays there for a long period of time. CSA and the Safety Measurement System. The FMCSA says SMS is not a safety fitness determination nor a safety rating. And it also says, again, use of the SMS for purposes other than those identified above may produce unintentional results and inaccurate conclusions. Yet, as an insurance provider, it is brought up at claim time. That's the dilemma. What are the behavior analysis and safety improvement categories? This is a key part of here. What it's saying here is that this whole system is looking at the behavior of the motor carrier, really the behavior of the driver and the control of the driver's activities by the motor carrier. And they're seeing if that behavior could potentially lead to a crash, and for the insurer to improve, that's the key word, improve before a crash happens. So the system is based into 7 basics, which will represent those behaviors that the FMCSA potentially could lead to a crash. The basics was developed based on information from a number of studies that quantify the associations between violations and crash risk, as well as statistical analysis and input from the enforcement subject matter experts. In other words, there are over 600 particular violations that I would suggest you all download, and through the system you can. If you don't know how to download the violations, send us an email and we'll show you how to do that so that you're aware of each severity violations. As most of you know, there are 7 violations, 5 are public. Unsafe driving is what you would expect: speeding, following too close, not using your turn signals. Hours of service used to be called fatigue. This is where they're driving beyond the time limits of 11 hours a day driving, 14 hours working, 70 hours in 6 days, 80 hours in 7 days, without taking the breaks required. And most of those violations are logbook violations, meaning their records aren't correct. They haven't filled them out on a timely basis. One of the things that is coming in the very near future concerning the hours of service is electronic logs. One of the things that, just as an aside, that I would encourage your insurer to seriously look at is installing electronic logs on their vehicles. This will take or solve a lot, if not most, of the problems that they have with the hours of service compliance. Driver fitness has to do with, is a driver CDL current? Do they have a medical card with them? Do they speak sufficient English? Those kind of things. Controlled substance was, as you would think, drug and alcohol. Vehicle maintenance, as also that you would think about brakes, lights, tires, low security, those items. Hazmat is new. If you have been this for a long time, you know that last year they got rid of the load security, moved those into vehicle maintenance, which in my opinion put additional pressure on flatbed operators versus dry van operators, because of now they're all lumped together and came up with a hazmat compliance, which is simply purely paperwork. The last one is the crash indicators, again showing when the crashes happen. One element of those that you all would also be aware of is that the crashes that you look at have no function of causation. In other words, the driver could have done nothing in that crash, had not been at fault, was not contributing to it, yet they would still be cited. This is an area of dispute that's going on as we speak at the FMCIEF level, with discussions with the American Trucking Association to try to predict some crash indicators that do have an element of causation. We all have seen court cases that we think our insureds did nothing wrong, but later juries and other found people wrong. So that's a very slippery slope they're trying to go down to, but that's one of the arguments. As a part of that, just as an aside, when you match up losses that you might have on loss runs from the insurance carrier with the crashes that you find in the CSA and SMS, they don't always match. You might have more crashes, meaning the smaller ones that are not DOT recordable crashes, or you might have some crashes shown on the CSA that were not on loss run because there was no liability, there was no payments made. So just be able to relate those things. But the key word to the basic is improvement, and this is what we want to talk about, is to help your insureds approve. One of the concerns that you have is what they get in the percentage. And in these percentages, there are two things that are involved, and this is a part of the methodology. The higher the score, the worse you are. And the second is they're put in what they call event groups, and these event groups are based on, for the basic of unsafe driving and crashes, the number of power units that they have. They operate based on the 150 information, that update that's provided, or for the other ones based on the relevant inspections. So it's not a measurement of safety, it's a measurement of how they compare with other people in their event groups. And they develop a percentage. So it's a comparison with the safety event groups. It's not a measurement of any one motor carrier's safety. In other words, the motor carrier could be doing the same thing day in and day out. They could have everything exactly the same, and their score could change not depending on their operation, but depending on other operations. So it's not a measurement of safety, it's a measurement of how peer pressure, really, how they feel within this peer. Is it fair? Based on all the information we have, is no. Yet, this is what we have now. There is another thing that you need to be aware of that we don't have time in this webinar to do, and that the CSA has a new look on their web page, and that look will have more detail, and this is supposedly what they are saying, that there will be more detail, and in fact they will be able, the motor carrier will be able to find out what other motor carriers are in their peer group. So there's a new enhancement that's going to happen. The process is that you need to look into this because they're going to take comments through this first week in January. Then they'll come up with some final rulemaking, usually announced somewhere in the March, April frame, and then they'll institute it usually the last part of the last quarter of next year. So we'll have a transition not only of how the web page looks, but the information that'll be available as we come through this full process. The thresholds are where they get an alert, and this is the key part here, because the alert is significant, and when they exceed the threshold, they will get an alert which will trigger an intervention. One of the things they do say here in the second paragraph, this is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration analyzing has shown that the strongest relationship to crashes is found with high percentage of unsafe driving hours of service. Those are where the alerts have an attachment point earlier. The other basics they feel have some relationship to crashes, but they don't have evidence that can absolutely prove that, so those thresholds are lower, meaning they'll affect less motor carriers. As most of you all should know, the threshold for unsafe drivers, hours of service, and crashes is a 65% for general freight. For the other ones, it's an 80%. So that's the relevant peer group. Again, unsafe driving is based on numbers of power units, as are crashes. The other ones are based on relevant inspections. They could be in a different peer group for unsafe driving than they do for hours of service. So again, it's not one peer group, it's a peer group per category. Now, here's the key. When they get an alert, they get a warning letter. We could not produce the warning letter here just because it was hard to download. If you want to get a copy of this warning letter, you can go again to fmcsa.org and look at and click on CSA results, and there's a ability to download the warning letter. But the warning letter has 3 elements in it. The first element says your safety performance has fallen to an unacceptable level. This is what is driving a concern of insurance carriers, is having that letter presented to your insureds, and then at court time to have that letter or that warning brought forward, and what that wording in that warning letter might or might do as far as their jury or the mediator's approach to your insureds. That's the concern. The second concern that we have is MCIEF will also evaluate your safety performance through increased roadside inspections. Again, that's why drivers might not want to work for a motor carrier who's on alert, because they're going to have more inspections, which means there's more opportunities to have violations cited not only against the motor carrier but also against the driver. It will delay their operation. It will also interrupt, for shippers' purposes, the flow of the cargo. But the other point here is the FMCSA doesn't expect a motor carrier to answer the problems, to address the problems, because they'll find out if the motor carrier is getting better because they're going to inspect them more often. What is missing a lot of discussion is in the 4th paragraph that says we encourage you to take this warning letter seriously and improve your safety record. That's what I want to focus at, because I think we in the insurance industry, the providers of service to the motor carrier, can help our insured react to those warning letters and help them develop a safety program that will address the problem. I think that information could be used to both underwriting purposes, could be used with shippers, and could be used in court time, because that's exactly what it says. Has my insured helped in this, has improved, and here are the steps they've taken. In other words, did they take it seriously? Once they get a warning letter, then the FMCSA is encouraged the carriers to do a number of things. And again, carriers do not need to respond in writing. Again, after receiving the warning letter, the FMCSA does encourage motor carriers to log into the safety management system to examine the data. For you who are not familiar with this, every motor carrier can go into their DOT number and their PIN number. Again, one of the things that you need to be aware of is to help the insured get a PIN number if they don't have one or have access to that PIN number, so they can look at it to see what actually went into this information. They tell you to ensure the accuracy, and if there are things there that are not accurate because it was not a vehicle that they ever owned, they ever operated, the DOT number could be listed inaccurately, things like that. That can be corrected through the data queue. They want to look at the types of violations, and they'll have the summary of those violations and see where the severity and which ones they need to pay attention to the most. They can conduct detailed data analysis where they'll have spreadsheets to show this stuff, and all this can be downloaded, and then they can issue safety issues they might have to. Again, the website spells out a lot of the things the motor carrier can do, and in fact it tells you how to improve their operations. So that as you discuss how you can help your motor carriers, some things are very simple to do because they're spelled on the web page. What happens is when they get the warning letter, if they do not improve, then they're going to get a phone call, and be asked, how have you addressed the problems? The next step would be, if they are still having problems, is they're going to get a visit at their location by a DOT officer and find out which of these specific areas they need to get looked at, meaning hours of service logs or maintenance records, which would be a focus on-site inspection. And the last one is a complete compliance, where they look at everything. But those are the procedures, and as they go through all these procedures, the ultimate results would be, if the motor carrier is found unsafe, then the FMCSA would have a possibility to shut them down. In fact, if you read some discussion just recently, there was another bus company that was shut down, and there's some 53 bus companies in the last month that have been shut down because of unsafe records. The FMCSA is shutting motor carriers down because of their safety record, and this is important. But hopefully we, as insurance providers, as providing service to motor carriers, can help them before they get down this slippery slope. But again, we need to do this. The problem you have here is that this data is monthly, so it has to be looked at on a monthly basis, and these steps. And I remind you that where we're talking about are the smaller motor carriers whose main concern is how to pay the bills, how to get from point A to point B, how to keep their drivers happy, and how to drive their truck. And so how much time they have to do all this is sometimes not enough to do it properly. When your insurer gets an alert or close to one, I would suggest you to help them to improve. The steps that I would suggest is talk to them, call them up. They might not be aware of this. They might not have gotten a letter yet, because the letter takes time to mail, even though the web page or the triangle will be against their basic, all the stuff. Look at what makes up their scores, whether it is seat belts or speeding or other things. You need to understand the severity list, which ones have more severity than others. For example, speeding on interstate highway only have a severity rating of 1. Speeding off an interstate highway, if you go over 15 miles from the speed limit, is a 10, which is the highest. So you don't talk about governing the trucks on interstate highway. The problem is how the driver is controlled once they get off the interstate highway. You also need to understand the time waiting. For the motor carrier, there is a very short window of severity here, and the system recognizes improvement quickly, because for any violations for the first 6 months, the severity is times 3. From 6 to 12 months, the severity is times 2. And for over 12 months, severity is times 1. So just in time, if they can stay clean for 6 months, their overall severity rating will go down by 1/3. For 12 months, it'll go down by 2/3. So point that I've looked at a number of times, the motor carrier has called me up or their agent and said, we need to get a new DOT number, we need to do this, and I'll look at it, and if they wait another month, then their whole severity rating will be taken care of just from the time waiting part of it. See if there's any misinformation. Again, use the data queue to correct. And you need to access the data queue through the motor carrier's DOT number and plan. And then you need to develop a plan to address the problem. You need to do this now, not later. I had a call from an agent who was saying that their insured had an alert and the carrier did not want to insure them again. And I asked the question, what have they done about it? Well, they didn't do anything about it. They were within 8 days of renewal. You don't want to wait until then to do something about it. You want to look at it when they get the warning letter and have a plan put in place and have them address that plan then. Then my suggestion is inform the insurance carrier about what the insured is doing to correct the plan. Yes, I know we got a hesitation to do that. Yes, I know that you're saying they're bringing that to their attention and maybe we don't want them to know about it. Well, most insurance carriers that we know of are tracking this also. They know about it, and if they don't know about it today, they're going to know about it at renewal time. And to me, that's the most important time in our insurance life is renewal time. So my suggestion is to do it now, to have a plan, let the insurance carrier know about the plan, and this could be shared to the insurance carrier as well as shared with the shippers and others that they're doing it. You don't get a new DOT number That does not work. I wrote a blog a year ago, obtaining a new DOT to wash out bad past experience just doesn't work. The bottom line is they're going to be inspected more often. They're going to be called by the DOT for new entries. It just won't work. And since I wrote that blog, MAP 21 is actually shortened the time frame where they'll have interventions or have a meeting with the DOT officers from 18 months to 12 months. And also you have now the Central Analysis Bureau that every insurance carrier that I'm aware of in this segment is using that would have a chameleon carrier potential flag, and they're not going to get insurance if they're a chameleon carrier easily. And again, those things will affect them. So getting a new DOT number is not the answer. The answer is to address the problem. So helping the motor carrier with the CSA scores. What makes a DOT officer stop a motor carrier? You have the selection inspection system, and the top of that list is anybody who is new to the business, meaning the new entries, or if there's not enough information concerning that, or they have a score. You all might remember the old SAFSTAT system, which says that if their score is 0 to 49, then to pass from 50 to 74 is worth a look at, and over 75 is a stop. That system is still available. It's available, though, to DOT officers for when they look at the insureds to determine should they stop it or not. So when they put in the computer number, my purpose here is so that they don't ever put their number in the computer. That's what we'll look at. There's two places the motor carriers could get an inspection, a fixed location. Those are weigh stations and port of entries. We've run up and down the highway where it says all trucks pull over here, and the weigh stations open or not go through there, or on roadside, meaning DOT officers running down the road. They see the activities of the motor carriers and they pull them over for a stop. Most inspections are done at the roadside. So on-road activities that get the officer's attention. Remember, the motor carrier's logbooks, driver qualification, drug testing, hazmat are not checked until they're stopped. So a DOT officer becomes aware of the motor carrier and feels the motor carrier would warrant an alert. So they have to see it, recognize it, and put their number into their system. There are only two activities that get the motor carrier's attention: unsafe driving and vehicle maintenance, meaning speeding, no turn signals, falling too close, stoplight violations, those violations. Second one is tires, lights, those things. So the key part here is that you need to control the driving, or why you drive. Simply said, you need to drive within the speed limit. You need to use your turn signals. You need to not follow the driver needs not follow so close. They need to not erratically change lanes. They need to be cognizant of those things, particularly on non-interstate highways. They also need to inspect their vehicle on an ongoing basis, on a daily basis, as you know. So there's two steps that you need to encourage the insurer to do to lessen their chance to be stopped from a maintenance standpoint. Every time it comes back to the home base before they go to another trip, they need to have the items that could deteriorate during the next trip checked by the driver, noting any violations and the mechanic paying attention to. Things like tire wear, things like leaking of oil, leaking of air, tie down or the of their fire extinguishers, or they're recharging the fire extinguishers, and those kind of things. Then on a daily basis, the driver needs to inspect their vehicle, and particularly to make sure all the lights burn, the loads are secured, and the obvious maintenance are done that would drive the driver, that will look at or have the DOT officer pay attention to them. One of our friends, a TSR designee, actually, who drives sometimes, says that he drives, and when he drives, he actually takes a step ladder with him and takes spare light bulbs with him so he can make those repairs as he sees them. In other words, don't get the DOT officer's attention. Drive within the law, inspect the vehicles on a daily basis, and correct any problems as you see them before you take off and get on the highway. The problem with that second one is the driver is not getting paid to do that, and that's one of the concerns. But yet they need to make sure that is done. I wrote a white paper that you can have on TSA website addressing in detail, addressing the pain, managing the SMS performance. It spells out the things that we just talked about and gives you some suggestions how to do it. Feel free to download to use that with your insured. Simply stated, but it takes driver training, monitoring, and enforcement or encouragement. It depends on your attitude. Do you whip the horse, or do you give them a carrot? And so a part of this is to encourage the DOT, the CDL driver, the driver of the vehicle, to inspect the vehicle daily, to get those results back on a daily basis so that they're doing those things. So those things need to be addressed, and those are the things the motor carrier needs to buy into so that they're not stopped. If the officer does not see behavior that would cause attention, then the motor carrier won't be stopped. It's very simple that way. In my youth, I used to play a lot of basketball, and one of the things that we did, because we had a championship team, one time the IRS officers wanted to have a game with our team. And I said I'd play that game, but I'm going to play on somebody else's name, because I'm not going to elbow an IRS officer. Same thing here. You don't want to bring attention to somebody that can come down and have some enforcement upon you. So the way to do that, again, is to operate the vehicle within the law and make sure that the obvious things that are maintenance are properly handled, mainly lights, tires, and load security. And if you do that, you're going to lessen the chance of being stopped, therefore improving your CSA scores. Final thought. You need to understand how CSA and MSS works. You need to understand the severity and the time factors. You got to get ahead of the problem. You got to help your insured address these problems and make sure they're doing it on a timely basis. And that needs to be communicated to the people who are involved in their lives that pay attention to these things, their insurance provider and their shippers. I would suggest that you as an insurance agent, when the insured gets close to this, you need to visit the motor carriers, you need to review the information, you need to help them with data queue, you need to develop a plan to address the problem, you need to let the insurance carriers know about that plan, and then you want to keep monitoring those things. Those are the suggestions. The element that we're missing here is how do we find out when our insured has or gets close to an alert so that we can help them. We can help them ourselves. For bigger risk or larger risk, you might want to have other people to help them. Steve Bryant, who you all should be familiar with if you went to our annual conference, specializes this through their program of Visio. They have systems there. They even have systems to help the driver on a free basis to correct some of their scores in PSP. Strongly recommend for larger fleets and all that you discuss with him or other providers here, or the loss prevention of your insurance carriers you're placing with even smaller risk have programs to help them improve. So you want to take not only what you know and what to do and what the things that I have suggested in dealing with the pain, but also for your insurance carriers and their loss prevention. Those loss prevention personnel for insurance carriers are not foes, they're friends. They're there to help the risk. The insurance carriers already made an investment to issue the policy. They underwrote it. They want to keep that insured as one of their insureds as long as that insured is performing properly. And one way to help them do it is have a friend in their loss prevention department that can verify that the insured is doing everything right. That's one way to get over the hurdle of them improving as we help them improve and the verification of the underwriter that they're doing that. So strongly encourage you to have a relationship with loss prevention personnel of your insurance carriers and let them help you insured and you in the steps, as well as use the information that we provided here. The warning letter could be the smoking gun. It's used by the plaintiff's attorney and experts. It attempts to use the unacceptable level to get more dollars. They fail to read, we encourage you to improve your safety record. When your insured approaches an alert, you got to get a plan. This would help in court systems too. Because I've done this, I've been working for a number of period of time, so the Motor Carriers Insurance Education Foundation has stepped to help its members know when their insured gets close to or gets a warning letter. So keeping up with your insurance scores. I've had a long-time relationship with Greg Lack of Carrier Software. He and I have been working for over a year now to develop a program for members of the Motor Carriers Insurance Education Foundation to assist as an agent to keep current of the insured scores. This is one way. You all might have other ways. This is a way that I have tried to help develop that will give you assistance. The bottom line is keep track of your insured scores, and when approaching a warrant, visit and take action. This also could be an additional service that you provide your insured by saying, I will monitor your scores for you, and I'll give you information on your monthly scores so that you know what they are. The program is basically for smaller motor carriers who do not have time to monitor their scores, who are not already part of other monitoring services like Visio. This is where I believe they need special help, that you can help them do this. So keeping current on your insured CSA scores, I asked Greg Lack of Carrier Software, can you develop a warning system when a motor carrier that is registered with you approaches an alert? An email will be sent to the agent, to the company, to the producer, one that is not, and one that's not costly. Well, he did it. This is a special program for members of the Motor Carriers Insurance Education Foundation. It will keep current on your insured CSA score. The basics here is an email will be sent to the agent that with one or more of the options. They can provide the complete score. They can provide a score when they get within 10% of an alert, or when they get an alert. The reason I did this is depends on how much time you want to pay. If all you want to pay time with is when they have a problem, then you would not want to get their scores on a monthly basis. If you want to provide a service to your motor carriers, then you might want to give them a score on a monthly basis. That's your option. Those costs, it doesn't cost any more to get the email. It depends on how much you want to. You could also have an email sent not only to a central location in your thing, but to each producer. So the long-time suggestion is when an insurer gets an alert, an agent will need to visit with the insurer to help them develop a plan to address the problem. Share the plan with their insurance and monitor their scores to see if the plan is working. So this is a method so you can know when you need to have this steps taken to help the insured. So keeping current here is service to your insureds and or the motor carrier. Provide their score monthly. Let them know when they're approaching an alert. It depends on your desire to provide scores as a service or just when attention is needed. Risks that need this service the most, again, are smaller motor carriers, one without safety managers. Even though some of the ones with safety managers might could use this too. Motor carriers that have no idea about CSA, and you'll be surprised how many still don't. So here are the steps. You set up the service by calling Carrier Software. This is Greg Lack's information. Everyone who's attending this webinar will send from our office. Beth will send you an email out how to start this process and how to get more information, and if you're interested, how to sign up. You would register your client. You would choose which one of these you want, scores or 10 or alert. And you will receive an email with information on the basis when they're changed. This would be done mainly monthly when they are when the newer data is released and their scores change. Now here's the cost we're working with. First off, there's no setup fee, and you can register for $20 a month, 50 DOT numbers, $30 a month, 100, $50 a month, 200. And on up. In other words, for pennies, you can keep track of your insurance, depending on how many you have and how many you want to track. You can try this for 3 months. No long-term commitment. You don't sign contracts. It's on a monthly basis, and those services are there. Again, for what I consider very small fees, you can at least do this preliminary service with your motor carriers to get them ahead of their problems. This is information that we'll send you concerning the carrier's software. They've been around a long time. They've provided services to the insurance to people about contact information. They have access to the data directly from FMCSA and can download this information. They have other services beyond the monitoring services that we have here. That's the program we just discussed. If you need more information, you can provide other services. They can do a risk assessment, which will go through and do the analyzation that FMCA suggestion where it's coming from. That will be additional $6 per motor carrier. You can then also even have safety analysis for smaller fleets and all those kind of things that will help you discuss those. That's a $7 fee. This will be the same information that some of you all are getting or some of your insureds are getting from CAB, but at a far less cost than signing up for CAB. Again, no long-term contract, no long-term commitment, not a lot of upfront cost. So it depends on if you want to monitor it, how you want it, at $7 or $10. The way you use this is when you approach the insured and they do have some problems, you might want to look at this information so that you can talk to the insured about it. You also might want to look at this information prior to sending it to insurance carrier to see if there's any anomalies there that you need to address with that carrier. Again, these are services offered here. These are services that are designed especially for the members of our foundation. The ones that I encouraged Greg to do was the monitoring one. That's the simple one, the cheapest one. But at the same time, these other things might be useful to you, and I suggest that you look individually to see if there can be some services to you. They also have prospect lists, and this has been the service they have done for a long time, where you can get people in your territory that have DOT numbers and how many units they have, and information in the web and the license and insurance about their 91X filing dates and their scores. So our suggestion is to be active. You need to provide the insured more service than just their CSA scores. You need to understand the CSA so you can be helpful to them and help the insured with a way to get the information that will assist you to be more valuable to your insureds. That's the whole purpose of trying to set this thing up with Greg and announcing that we do have this put in place. We can have question and answers. If you want to email more information, you can email to Beth at TSR. We're going to send everybody an email after who's attended here to give you some further information, and so that Craig and people from Carrier Software can get back with you with exactly how to start this process. Again, provide your insured more than a policy. As always, we thank you for your time in this area. We hope you find this hour together once a month is useful for you. I want to remind you that our next webinar, the truck stop, is for the information purposes is Thursday, January the 9th. So we hope you have a good Christmas and a good New Year's. But the one that's going to be presented January 9th will be different. It'll be what the insured needs to do when a crash happens, an accident happens. Those we're encouraging for you to, and they're designed to help the motor carrier with their post-crash information, such as drug testing, record services, information that they need to secure for spoilization and things like that. We want those to be opened up to the motor carrier industry. To that end, we're encouraging you as a retail agent or insurance carrier to send information to your insureds to attend these webinars. They're free. You can give them an invitation, or Beth give an invitation. We're also reaching out to various state trucking associations and also the Truckload Carriers Association, so their members can access this information. This is a service that the Motor Carriers Insurance Education Foundation and through the TSR program is providing to our valuable customers, our insureds, to expand our footprint, to let them know they need to do business with agents who understand their industry and who are there to help them. That's the whole purpose of this. These things are open for membership, members only, and we hope you find this a benefit. You all have a great day, a great weekend, and a great holiday season. That's our presentation. That's our hour. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we're out of here.